Hello, everybody, and welcome back to Talking with Ty. You're coming back to season two, and this is episode two. I am going to encourage you guys. First and foremost, I'm Ty Jackson. I am your host for today. I always start out I just know that everybody knows me out there, so I just jump right into it. Want to encourage you guys before I even get started with episode two. If you missed episode one of Talking with Ty season two, Melissa D. White, you missed the treat. And I'm going to encourage you at some point today, this weekend, in your leisure time. Please tap in and listen. If you are wanting to be motivated, if you are needing to be pushed, if you're out there feeling alone in your journey and in your walk, make sure that you tuned in just so you can get those gems that she was dropping. We're going to continue right along. I had to come out the gate swinging, but then I had to continue and keep it up. For anybody that didn't tune in last Tuesday with us, just to explain again, Talking with Ty is a podcast. It is a platform that is built for the story behind the brand. I believe that everybody is connected through story. All of our stories, whatever happened in life, wherever we started, our stories bring us back together and it makes us familiar with each other. So I created a podcast to tell the story behind the brand. It is mostly a multifamily podcast because that is where I serve, is in the multifamily industry. And there's a lot of interesting people out there, and they have these huge titles. And every time we go to a conference like Apartmentalize, we see these people. And we see people like James and Melissa, and it's like, oh my God, I would love to know them. Or you hear people whispering, like, that's James Burwell. Like, you should meet him. And it's like, who is he though? Besides working at Liberty Rent, who is James? So I created this platform so we can tell the story behind the brand. Today, guys, I am excited because we have the opportunity. And when I say we, I mean me and you guys, because this is a live podcast. You're able to ask questions and hopefully we can get them answered while we're talking during this hour. Today, we have the opportunity to talk to the James A. Burwell. James is who I call my multifamily best friend. So all you guys out there that's loving on James, scoot over. James is my bestie. But guys, James is a seasoned business leader currently serving as the chief sales officer for Liberty Rent. With over 17 years of experience in the rental housing industry, James has shown a strong desire to build and strengthen relationships. James has served on several committees, both statewide through the Mississippi Apartment Association, TAA, and the National Apartment Association. He's the 2019 NAA Leadership Lyceum class. He's also a recipient of the Alex Jacku Diversity and Inclusion Scholarship Award. James is a strong advocate for diversity, equity, inclusion, and justice. But if you ask his colleagues, they would describe him as a tireless servant leader who offers exceptional solutions that deliver profitable results. If you guys could help me in welcoming my friend James Burwell to Talking with Ty.
Wow.
Hi, James.
Hey, Ty. Hey, everybody. Man, I was sitting there listening to you, and I had to look back down, look in the mirror, make sure you were talking about me. I didn't know what was going on.
You know what? It is first and foremost, welcome to Talking with Ty. Welcome to my platform. And I cannot go any further without wishing you a happy, belated birthday. How old did you turn on yesterday?
41.
Come on, 41.
Yeah, so it's a blessing, and thank you so much, and thank everybody who wished me a happy birthday. You know, I have a dichotomy. I'm a public person, but then I'm also very private when it comes to family time and things like that. My wife and son deserve that. So I mean, to hear that shout out yesterday, to hear this today, I mean, I'm honored and overjoyed. So I love it. Love it. Thank you.
I will
Gratitude.
definitely say that I have never seen anybody get a happy birthday shout out on LinkedIn. So for that, I mean, everybody in the industry, the amount of respect, the high regard that people hold you to is so amazing. So Greg Sabana said, youngster. We 80s babies out here, Greg.
Yeah, yeah.
The future leaders of NAA. So without further ado, James, we're just gonna jump right into it because
Okay.
I personally, this is the thing, guys, when I bring people on my platform, I don't know them. I spent some time with James at Apartmentalize this year, and we spent some well needed time over breakfast and just really
Yeah.
getting a chance to know each other. But I think that was only our second time meeting each other in
Right.
person. So I'm eager to find out so much more about you. So we know James with Liberty Rent. We know James, the chief sales officer. We know James, the DEI guy for NAA. But who is James? Who is James? If I was talking to one of your friends, who is James?
Oh man, that's a loaded question, but I'll take it. I'm here for it. So if you were talking to my friends, they tell you that I love people over everything. That's how I was raised. I mean, I grew up on a farm in Madison, Mississippi. Shout out to Deep South, but I was raised with those values to value people over everything, to seek out relationships and meaningful relationships. And I don't mind saying it since we're being candid. I grew up in a single parent household, and I know that's prevalent in not just the Black community, but in communities in general. And my mother, is three of us, I'm the oldest, but my mother knew nothing about business. She was a lifelong school teacher. She valued education. She valued treating people with dignity, treating people with respect. And that's something that I've always held dear, and she taught me at a very young age when I first entered the workforce, to always seek people out, learn their names, learn something about them, because as much as you may be the only person that takes the time to actually care about the other individual. So that's something I've always held dear. I've always valued that. And I try to extend that. Every person that I meet, every person that I encounter, I introduce myself, and we'll get into that. But my first NAA encounter, and shout out to Greg Sorbano, because if you weren't on here, I was gonna definitely call you out. When I showed up and I was literally the only person there from Mississippi, Greg and I bumped into each other at, I believe it was a PAC event, and this was years ago, and Greg just basically told me, "Hey, look, you're not alone." And to me, that was the first time I had encountered anybody else that shared that kind of perspective, with me. And then from that day forward, we went to lunch, we went to dinner, and that was, we were in the food line and fighting the mascots to get in the food line. But, it was a great experience. And, I thought about, from that point forward, how could I pay that forward? How could I move that forward? So backing up a little bit, I grew up, my mom, lifelong teacher, before she passed away, and that was a critical junction in my life. But she encouraged me to go to school. I went to Tougaloo, shout out HBCUs, and yeah, absolutely HBCU proud. But I went to Tougaloo with the intention. I didn't know if I was going to be in the pulpit, if I was going to be a politician, if I was going to be a professor. I just knew I had to go to school, right? And that was the driving factor for all of that. So, going to Tougaloo, I was able to graduate. And during my senior year, actually working on my thesis, was taking electives in like economics and business, and just really piqued my interest in, business. and learning about, the economics of this country. So I left Tougaloo. I actually detoured. I went to Mississippi College, it's a local college here, and took some courses, on accounting, business administration, things like that, just trying to learn more about the business world, business perspective. And, we went there. It was a job fair, actually, that year in the fall. And Walgreens and Enterprise were two people. Once I put my resume out there, there were two people that reached out. And, one thing I want to say to everybody, before you enter a field, do your research.
Yeah.
Do your research. Know, the possibilities for growth, the possibilities for advancement, things like that. So I had the two interviews. And at the time, this was, my God, 20 years ago, which is crazy to even think about almost. But Walgreens was building a store every 18 hours. And I knew I wanted to travel. I knew I wanted to see the world. I knew, I wanted to just be exposed to as many things as I can. And just doing a little bit of research, I found out that Walgreens invested a lot in their management training program.
Mm-hmm.
So that was something, that I wanted to learn. You and Melissa talked last week about metrics and things like that, KPIs. And Walgreens provided that, learning how to read an operating statement, balance sheet, gross profit margins, things like that, how to lead a team. And those were things that I wanted to add to my repertoire. So, I took the interview, got the job, and I started the first half of my career, traveling and training and doing those types of things, and enjoyed it. And it was great. Fast forward to 2013, my mom passed away suddenly after a short illness. And, I'm a mama's boy, true mama's boy. So I said, I grew up in a single parent household, and it was really devastating for me.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I was heartbroken, and, I'd always been a determined, driven individual. But at that point, it was hard for me to think about, dreams, hard for me to think about my purpose, my gifts, my plan, when honestly, I was just trying to put one foot in front of the other. I mean, that was just real. And, I felt guilty because all the traveling I had done, the things I've been exposed to. And I was really lost. And, I left. I was done, with that job. And my wife, son, and I took maybe 6 months off, and just really trying to pray and center myself and just get back to who, God wanted me to be. And we were on vacation. And at this point, shout out to all the married couples out there. My wife was like, look, you can only mow the yard so many times during the week. You can only do so much stuff. I think you need to go back to work. So, I was sitting there on my iPad looking at Indeed, and I knew I wanted to go back into management. I didn't know what level, of management and things like that. But I found a listing for a property manager. And, towards the end of my mom's life, my first introduction to the apartment industry was she moved from our family home to an apartment. And the team there was great. It was a great experience. And, I'm like, okay, well, property management, I could try that out. I could do that. And, again, had zero experience, nothing. I had never managed a property, never done anything. But what I had was strong basics. And those basics, to me were, empathy, respect, the ability to communicate, the ability to relate to individuals, an understanding of, increasing value, increasing, profit on things, and, looking at items on the shelf versus inventory in an apartment complex versus, a community. I looked at it from a universal point of view. And I think that really helped. And that's what I said in my interview. And shout out to Jennifer at Bellhaven Residential, because she took a chance on me with zero experience and, opened the door for me.
So you
So
came through the door as a property manager, is
right,
what
and
you're telling me,
yeah, I was fortunate, blessed, but keep in mind I had 10 years,
of experience.
of experience, and I was running $1 million stores,
So you
here in
was ready.
Chicago. Say again.
You was ready
I
already
was
then.
ready. Yeah, I mean, I was ready. I was
So
ready.
before we even we
I was
gonna
ready.
stop right there at property manager because you don't even know with see I take notes when y'all are talking to me.
Yeah, yeah.
And with just the first part, so many things I just learned about you, James. I didn't know
That's
you
what
were
we here
married.
for, Ty.
I didn't know you had a child.
Yeah,
So the balance right there. Of course, I didn't know about your mom and about you not having a parent now. But all of those things that you just told me, that story is why James is the person that stands before us today. That's the James that I had
absolutely.
breakfast with. That Tidy is here today, guys. We're gonna let all the listeners know he's home from camp today. So when you see me doing this, Ty is being the mother and balancing her life too. So you said something. You said I didn't know if I was gonna be in the pulpit. See,
Right,
one of the
right,
things about multifamily, and when I read about you, it says servant.
right,
That relates back to the servant part of it. You said y'all moved from a house to an apartment, and a
right,
life changing event usually happens when we're out there dealing with residents. So many things had happened in your life that allowed you to be able to connect with people. So naturally, when you got on site to be a property manager, you were ready because these are the things property managers are not in. Shout out to all my people out there that are on site because this is not an industry that we're taught to be able to do. This is
right,
something that we're born to be able to do because you got to want to serve people to be in this industry, and you just do. You have to be a servant of people. And you said things like pay it forward, lead a team, you managing a household and being a father. And I love the fact that your support system said it's time to go back to work, James.
right, right.
It's time to do something different. So fast forward to now, we done became a property manager. We back out there. How did we get from there with property management to where we are now?
Well, that's I guess that's the twist in the story. So, faith is the thing that grounds everything, that I am and who I am. So, if you start from a position of faith, you realize that everything that happens to you is moving you towards where God wants you to be. So oftentimes, we're in situations where it's like, oh my God, why this, why that? And, I thank God for my wife and son because they snapped me out of it. It's so easy to be trapped in like a sorrow place, a hard place. You start to, be critical of yourself and could I have been here more? Could I have done more? So it was the hand of God that moved me from a why question to a how can I use this hurt, this pain to connect to other people, and it's people that were dealing with the same things and, who had dealt with the same thing. So moving through, again, finding this job literally on LinkedIn, on Indeed,
Mm-hmm.
moving from there, going to the property and just learning all I could. Bellhaven was an IRO situation, and I stayed there for 5 years. But during the 5 years, the Mississippi Apartment Association was formed. So they broke from home builders to, Mississippi Apartment Association. Fred Tako, Joshua Dick, they were all down there. I see Delilah on here. They were all involved. And shout out to Delilah because she was definitely a mentor for me when it came to, like board participation. And, to be quite honest, I didn't see many people of color. You could count them on one hand. And that was something getting into the industry, I was the only male, first of all, and then the only black male, second of all, to be like in a property manager position. And, being completely transparent, that was something that I felt needed to be changed.
Mm-hmm.
As people of color, we oftentimes it's not an issue of ability. It's never an issue of ability. It always comes down to access. And I learned that at an early age. I saw that at Tulu. I saw that in my life, and even at Walgreens. Just different locations and different people perspectives. Things like that. I had a chance to learn that. So I became really involved at the local level, and that led me to the first NAA advocate. I've been going to DC for some time, back and forth. My wife worked for one of the local congressmen here, and DC was one of the places where I just enjoyed. I enjoyed the advocacy part of it,
Mm-hmm.
and the ability to have mass change on that type of level was just intriguing to me. And you think about it, I spent 5 years at Belhaven on site, and it really instilled in me a hunger for what else was out there.
Mm-hmm.
And we've got to be internally driven. We've got to be internally motivated. And, just being able to do that, meeting, Greg nationally really opened my eyes. And I say Greg because honestly, I can remember sitting in the in the meeting, and they're going down by state, and like literally I'm the only person from Mississippi. So, and Greg purposely sought me out, and that's something Greg, I will never forget that, never forget that.
Let me
And
answer your question. How does it feel when you walk into a room? Because I know as a Black woman walking into some of these rooms, and I'm the only one. But how does it feel from a Black man's perspective? Because there's a lot of rooms that I've been in, and I'm going to be honest with you. Younger Black men, you probably the only Black man that I know on a national level. I want to say Chris Kent. Chris is from PAA, and he just started last year, and it may have been my first time knowing him. And then meeting Greg, and Greg is a little bit more seasoned. I wouldn't say older, a little bit more seasoned than us,
yeah,
but born in the 80s, coming in when I came in, being on the same trajectory that I'm on in this industry, you are the only one. So how does that feel when you in a room? Is it a heavy load because you are representation for the Black men, or how does that feel to you?
oh man, it's definitely a heavy load, and but it's one, I got broad shoulders, so I can take it. I can take it. And then, if not me, then who? Right. And
Right.
I think you have to come to a place where you realize that, you've been given an opportunity to represent. And, we get to represent. And that's where I work from a place of that. Like I get to attend these events. I get to interact, with people. And that first event, I talk about Greg, but man, I could list so many people, Mike, just multiple people who Mike Holmes, prime example, gave me an opportunity to lead a committee nationally, technology committee. He gave me an opportunity to go through Leadership Lyceum, things like that. But that first meeting, I must have given out 1,000 business cards. I mean, I left with a box. I went to can't remember if it was Kinko's or wherever, and I printed extra cards, but I went through every person I could hand a card out to, I did. And I've never been afraid to approach people, never been afraid to, talk to people. And, going back again to, what my mom instilled in me at an early age, just make yourself available and just reach out to folks. And
Mm-hmm.
many of those same people are still people that I can count as mentors and colleagues today, I can track that back to that first interaction. So, going from there, I set in, I was on no committees, not one, the first time I showed up. But I took the
Mhm.
schedule, found out everything I was interested in, and FedEx Kinko's. That's what's up. But I took the schedule and just went out, and just set in on every committee that I was interested in. DNI was a task force then. It wasn't a committee yet. Next gen, technology, things like that. I wanted to see what was going on, and what I found, it was a whole world outside of what I had been exposed to. So, Delilah can tell you, I came back from these meetings and I was on fire.
Yeah.
I was like, there is stuff going on nationally that we have no clue about. We need to, we need this, we need that. And government affairs, I came back. Government affairs was just the thing that really got me motivated to, enact here. And I started doing that. But really going from there to, and that is true, Melissa, exposure is the key. My eyes were opened, completely.
Mhm.
And, I went back and I was like, man, am I selling myself short, being here? What can I do, to do this? I learned about credentials and things like that. Shout out RPM Careers, NAAEI. And, I learned about the Alex Jackie Award, sitting
Mhm.
in this task force. And I'm like, oh, okay, well, my job won't pay for it, but I can get this award. I can write, I can express myself, I can do this.
There you go.
How can I make myself more valuable? And that's another key. We have to know our value, but then we also have to be ready to show receipts, right? And
Come on, receipts.
the way we show those receipts is with the credentials, with your track record, not just what you've earned in the past, but whose lives have you made differences in? And that's where I tend to move towards. We can be so limiting in our beliefs, working from a place of selfishness, what's in it for me kind of mentality. But when I walk into a room, like shout out to Melanin and Multifamily, I want to I want it all. I want it all. And y'all here, like I want it all. And that's the thing, how can I affect change on a massive scale? And if it's about making an introduction, sending a text, sending an email, having breakfast, buying you a coffee, what can I do to help you feel welcome in this space? How can I reflect the love and care that I have in myself to you? What can I do?
Oh,
And that's where I operate from. Everybody who's met me, that's me. Period.
and
You
that
know,
is you. You're saying some very profound things because everybody know me. When you on my show, I let you talk a little bit because I'm a talker and I
yeah,
do most of the talking. But the things that you are saying, James, I don't know if you hear me over here. Ooh, and then, yeah, yeah, I mean, you hitting the nail right on the head. How many lives have I changed? What lives am I impacting? Because that is the most wonderful thing about the multifamily industry is me being the AE. I get all the time, hey Ty, we're coming into Arkansas with a brand new development. We're looking for a new team. You know how exciting it is for me to reach out to somebody I know that has said, hey Ty, I'm looking for something. If you hear about anything, or when I can help an assistant manager become a property manager, or I can help that girl that's been at distressed properties her whole career finally get to a brand new development based off of a relationship. Like to be able to pay it forward, because that's what this is a pay it forward industry. And when you can pay it forward and you get in a position now to where you can bless, because it's a blessing to be a blessing.
right, right,
When you can start being a blessing, I think that's what attracts me most to our industry and keeps me here because I'm always able. Delilah said you are a connector, and I love that because that's why to whom more is given, more is required. God didn't put me in the position that I'm in for me not to pay it forward. So I want to dig a little bit deeper with you because the bow tie. We both love fashion, but we
Right.
both also know, and I want to see what you think on this. I dress up all the time, and I have in this industry because I've always dressed for the job that I want. But I'm a tall black woman. Some would say that I'm loud in the way that I speak. So one of the things I always knew that I had to be polished. I had to look nice. I was the only black woman in the room for so long. I was the only minority person that was up for a job, and the way that I look mattered. I'm just now starting to wear braids on national trips. I would have took my hair down and wore a bob or something like that. So with you being a man that you are a big man in stature, you tall, you could see James. My husband is 6'6". You could see him when he walks into a room. What would you say? How has your the way that you look, the way that you present yourself, does that have anything to do with it? The way that you want people to perceive James when he comes in?
I think it comes from a place of authenticity. And, even when I was on property, I tried to wear the polos. I tried to, do that. But, if you saw me on property 8 years ago or however, I would have a shirt and tie on. And that was me. We had to come from the same upbringing because I was always taught, to dress for the job you want. And, I could look back many times, even at Walgreens, mopping floors in a shirt and tie, that kind of thing. But, I think I got my sense of style, from my grandfather, my uncle, things like that. And it's something that it's just me. And, owning the tie, my grandfather would say that, wearing a bow tie keeps, the eyes up here, and that's the thing. I'm a big guy. I can't hide. I've got a very distinct voice. I've got a very, um, I guess, large presence, large demeanor, and things like that. And, the tie is just part of who I am. And I haven't worn a straight tie in God knows how long, but I have worn them before. You won't find any pictures of that because that was before smartphones, I think. But too, it was a perspective thing, for me, and I pay respect and homage to my grandfather, to my uncle. Every time I put a tie on, every time I step out, and wear a suit or wear, a shirt, it's me connecting to them, and it's me being intentional about that connection. And we all connect with our past and our ancestors in different ways. And I can walk through my son's 12. He's now getting into colognes and things like that. We were going through dealers the other day, and we walked through the women's section to get through the men's, and I smelled the perfume that my mom used to wear, and instantly, went back to remembering her getting dressed on Sundays and things like that. And when I put this tie on, I'm reminded of whose shoulders I stand on.
Come on.
My grandfather, lifelong farmer. Matter of fact, that was how he died. He got up. He used to work from Cane C to Cane C. Came in one day, just got in his recliner, went to sleep, and that was it. But on Sundays, this was his thing. He took time to polish his shoes. He took time to press his shirts. He took time to put his ties on, and that's the connection that I have with him. And I think about even now, carrying a handkerchief or carrying, a pocket knife or things like that. Things that I'm telling my son now are things that were poured into me, growing up. And keep your shoes shine,
Yeah.
keep your shirt pressed, things like that. And I think it disarms a lot of people, and I'm vocal, but I'm vocal being authentic. And that's the thing, the bow tie is authentically me. Everybody who's known me anytime, they've seen me with the tie on. That's just it. But I also know that you get the questions like, okay, why is he always dressed up? Why does he do that? Because I can. because I enjoy. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm just being honest. I can do it because I enjoy it. I enjoy going, shoe shopping and tie shopping and things like that. And that's the thing. We have to embrace ourselves holistically.
Yeah.
And at this point, it's just a part of who I am. If I don't wear it, people ask if I'm feeling okay, if I'm sick, if I'm,
They
whatever.
wondering what the problem is.
Yeah, they're like, "Are you okay?" I'm like, "I'm fine." It's just.
I'm gonna say this: if Liberty Rent don't work, their pulpit might have a place for you, brother, because we are all receiving the word. I want to go back to, I wrote down farmer when you talked about being raised on a farm and your grandfather, because I come from the supplier side also.
Right.
And knowing how to farm is a skill that a lot of people don't have, because a farmer is a patient man.
Right.
Because the crop don't grow the same day that it's planted, and it has to be watered. So for all of our suppliers out there, when I'm pushing that class on relationship selling, farming is one of the pieces that's a key piece. And that's why I excelled when I was at finderingapartments.com, because I understood that today I'm on plant. And then for the next 4 or 5 months, I'm going to water. But I'm going to continue to plow and work the land and do the things that I need to do while I'm waiting for that harvest. And I remember hearing something one time that said sometimes we miss the blessing in the harvest, because when the corn grow in, we start to celebrate. And that's when it's time to work.
Right.
We pray for these things that we want, and Lord, we want a harvest and I want it. But then when the harvest come in, and now I got all these speaking gigs, or it's time for me to get dressed for my podcast, I don't want the harvest no more, because the harvest comes with work. So how would you say being raised on a farm, because we're going back to granddaddy now, how did that set you up for being able to work at Liberty Rent or being able to be in multifamily? How would the farming side of it, how would you say that plays a part of it?
We can tie it in from a biblical perspective. Everything, there is a season, right? A time, a place, time to plant, time to pluck up that which has been planted, things like that. But it really keeps things in perspective for me, because realizing that, it takes time. Even let's talk about NAA, just on the perspective, getting on the ladder for, the executive committee. What happens? You plant the seed at what? You get on, and then you have to take the time to go through to get to, chair-elect, to get the chair, to get to right. You have to nurture that. But before you do that, you have to be elected, regional vice president. You got to do all these kinds of things. So really, I think you hit the nail right on the head. I'm an extremely patient person. Some would say I'm stoic in a sense, but again, that's my faith. And it's just what I've learned is that, a lot of times we're waiting on God, but then God is waiting on us to wait on him. If you put that, in perspective, we have to take the time to step back from, where we are and just look at it from a collective point of view, right? And, knowing that we all have a role to play, and I could think back another, event, and Greg could speak on this, but the DLP program, when they first, NAA first announced the DLP program, I wanted so bad to be in this program. I was like, man, this is it. I want to get there, and I didn't get it. And I was like, okay, if I haven't checked all the boxes, like what have I not done? And it wasn't what I hadn't done. It was the fact that I just it wasn't my time to be there, right? And you could take your blocks and you could go off again, be selfish and all of that, but then how could I be of service?
Yeah.
Again, asking not why, but how. How can I still be of service? Here we have these emerging leaders coming in. So I volunteered. I was on the committee. I did that and, led a session and all these kinds of things. But, you make yourself available for things, and you never know, the opportunities that come your way. So fast forward 2019 in Denver, I met Bubba, who's the CEO of Liberty Rent, and right there in Denver at Apartmentalize, and he's like, well, if I were to have an opportunity come up, would you be available? And I'm like, okay, at this point, I've been, at Bellhaven, I was there. I never considered the supplier side, but again, leaving myself open, for the opportunity. You never want to close yourself off. You always want to leave doors open. So another close friend, Kirk, was already there, and they were doing things, and helping people was at the core, of what I was looking for. And that's the thing. If you have to have a standard, and if your standard is, I want to be somewhere where I can serve other people,
yeah,
where I can affect change, where I can do that. We can be intentional in that, and we can be intentional in how we move and things like that. It's okay to turn things down when you feel it doesn't fit, your perspective or your values or your point of view. And, Bubba threw that out there, and that was 19. So fast forward again, 21, I started there, and I came on to lead a specific project kind of targeted at property management companies to kind of make the product more user friendly. And in that same time, Kurt left. So there was an opening, and I've never been one to shrink into a seat or anything like that. I felt like, hey, look, if not me, then who, right?
huh.
And they opened it up to the company. I applied, and I got the COO position. I have to say that was probably the longest, most intense interview that I've ever gone through, assessments and things like that, leadership style and so on and so forth. And it worked. I got there.
And
And then
you
the first,
said, and you said something. There are so many people out there in our industry. Sometimes they get stagnant in these roles because
right,
we come from a generation. If you were 80s baby, and if you go to the 70s and the 60s, you probably were definitely told this in the Black community: get that job, be
right,
quiet, go to work every day, put your head down, work hard, stay there, retire. So now that the younger generation is coming in, movers and shakers, and it's like, oh, what's over here? What's over there? I move around. I love the fact that you said you had a conversation at Apartmentalize.
right, right.
That is where it happens at, people. This is a relationship industry. And we
Absolutely.
see each other on LinkedIn, we see each other on Facebook, but when we are at AOD, Advocate, and Apartmentalize, amongst those other trips that you have, but these are the big trips to where if it is a person that you have seen on LinkedIn and you admire them and what they do, if it is a company out there, the time is now. James used a good word when he said shrink. Stop shrinking and stop shrinking on yourself. If you see somebody and you want to talk to them, go up to them. If it's a company that you want to work for, introduce yourself. But before you can do all of that, you have to be in a position. Now, here we come with the bow tie and the dress
Right,
and the makeup to
right.
be able to go up to introduce yourself to somebody, because we all know that there's never a second time to make a first impression with somebody.
Absolutely.
So balancing it all, because we're almost coming up to the hour. You have a wife, you have a 12-year-old son, you serve on committees, which is volunteer time. You have a
Right,
full-time career. I'm sure with the faith that we talked about and the way that we talked about God today, you're serving God on your
right.
off time, where you're serving God all the time, because there's no off time for him, but there's time designated to him. How are you balancing all of this? And when we see James, you are still smiling, you are still joyful. How is that happening? How do you do that?
I think I operate from a blessed perspective. I think about how blessed I am to get to have a wife, to get to be a father, to get to, volunteer, to get to work in the position, that I do, to get to meet people. And I tell folks, I shake hands, I kiss babies, I take pictures, I do it all. But I always work from a perspective of what an honor and a blessing, a privilege it is to be able to share a space, to be able to attend apartmentalize. I can remember, when I first was coming, when I couldn't afford to go. I couldn't afford to go to all the conferences. I couldn't afford to, do things that I did, and being able to go to dinner or being able to, go with someone, being able to split a room with somebody, things like that, going half on things. I will never forget those things. And I think we owe it to ourselves to keep things in proper perspective, right? And it's difficult being, a man of color, being a person of color in this industry. I don't have to talk about the diversity statistics. I mean, we see them, right? We go to these conferences and we recognize them. I don't have to talk about, diversity from a leadership perspective, whether you're on the supplier side or the operation side. There's a void in that, and programs like the DLP, programs like, Leadership Lyceum, are exposing us to opportunities that are there. And, you have to think about how can we all win? And I've always been that type of person. What can I do to help us all win? I talked about it with Marcy a few months ago. Shout out to Marcy Friends too. Awesome sister, awesome friend. Ty, she may compete with you on the bestie part. I don't know. But that's another story. We can talk about that. But, one of my favorite quotes, Shirley Chisholm, is if there's no room at the table, you don't have a seat, bring a folding chair. I had to mature in my journey, just since I've been in the industry, to the sense like I wanted to be at every table. I wanted to walk in every room. I thought every position, everything was for me. It was mine. I wanted it. It was there. I wanted it. I can have it, right? But you have to shift your perspective. Don't be afraid to pivot. It's okay to pivot. It's okay to change your perspective, as long as you're operating from, a grounded area. But bringing that folding chair, it's not always for you. Maybe you bringing that seat for somebody else, right? Maybe you use that seat, to stand up in and call attention to, an injustice or something that's going wrong. Or, maybe you take that seat and you fold it back up and you bang on the table, right? And you have to do that kind of thing when you realize that every space is not for you. But you have to come to a maturity point where you realize that your legacy is not diminished by you not sitting in that seat. How can you help other people? And that's my whole goal. I want to treat people how I want to be treated. I know it sounds cliche, the golden. I know it does, but Lord knows that's the way I look at things. If I can be of service to someone, if I can encourage someone, if I can empower someone to move from one space to the next. People are thinking like, man, I just, this may be for me and it may not. If I can offer, a perspective, things like that, that's the place I'm at now. That's where I am. But it comes with maturity. You
I
have to
love
mature.
that because that's a powerful place to be in, a place of service, a place to be a servant, because I think that is why God created us, to serve each other. And if
Absolutely.
somebody is serving James and James is serving somebody else, then we're all being served and getting the things that we need.
Right.
And when you come from that perspective, because when we think about the multifamily industry as a whole, nobody wakes up and say that they want to move. It
Right.
is one of the top 10 life-changing events. It's one of the most stressful things to do is to move, because something happens in life when somebody moves into an apartment. It's, you know what? It is 90 degrees outside in July. I'm moving,
Right.
James. I'm moving.
Right.
No, somebody, there's a loss of income. And it's not always bad things. It's not, but it could be. It's a divorce, or it's a first time moving out. It's graduating college. I'm getting married, but there's a life changing event. And when you are, I tell everybody that's on site, the moment the residents start to irritate you, this is not the industry for you. For the
Right.
supplier partners, the moment going out and servicing and farming and keeping those relationships and attending the apartment association events, the moment that that is a drag on you, now we know life be life, and
Right.
sometimes it's a drag for all of us, even though we love this industry. But if that feeling continues, then this is not the industry for you, because this is the industry for people who want to serve other people. And I feel like that is why you do so good at it, because you are a servant. And yes, it may be cliche when you just hear people say it, but when you see people put the action behind the words, now it's inspiring. Now it's humbling. So I think I've seen you. This is the first time you said it to me, but I see it and I feel it from you every time that I have an interaction with you. I mean, I claimed you as being my best friend the second year at the gate. Some of
Right.
these folk I've been knowing out here for years at NAA. And I just say, hey, girl. So so that
Yeah.
is because that is who you exude, and that's who you are as a person. And I wanted to bring you on my platform because I wanted to share you with everybody, and I wanted to find out more about. And now me learning the things that I learned about you today, I already respected you and look up to you, and was inspired by you. But I'm motivated. I mean, I can't wait to see you again and to work with you. And I know you have some other things outside of multifamily. And briefly, before we get off of here, I want to talk about that an idea that you shared with me. Because see, I'm gonna expose you for all your ideas and everything. So
Oh,
I
just
know
throw it
you
out there.
great.
Just throw it
Throw it
out
out
there.
there. We throwing it
Yeah.
out there. So tell us before I want it to be heard first on my platform, Talking with Ty. Tell us about the idea you were thinking about.
Oh man, what, taking over the world? No, I'm kidding. World
Yeah.
domination. That's I operate from that. That's it. World. How can I take over the world? I'm pinking the brain over here. I wake up every day thinking how I can take over the world. But no, so I've been working with Melissa, and shout out to Melissa and Delilah, activation coaching, and I've got an idea to work with men of color to empower and encourage them from a place where I know all too well. I've lived it, I've done it, and how can I specifically target men of color and empower and encourage them to move from a space of wearing a mask. And we don't have the time to unpack that, and we didn't touch on that. But you talked about the weight walking into a room. It's also a mask in a sense where it's tough when you've been reduced to somebody's bias. When you've been reduced to their perspective of you, it's hard to move beyond that place of hurt. And I know it. I've experienced it. I've done it, and I've seen so many talented individuals be marginalized by the bias that they've experienced. And if I can do it, I just want it to be known collectively that we all can do it. But not to discredit anybody else, but I want to it's time for men of color to come from the shadows, to move into places of not just places of leadership, but places of dignity, places of respect, places of fulfillment. And, if I can encourage and empower, people from that perspective, that's where I'm moving towards. So, that'll be coming in the coming weeks. And that's something that I'm looking forward to offering, life and leadership coaching, from that perspective, targeting specifically men of color, but then also, opening myself up generally, to anybody. I don't turn down any text, any phone call, any email, anything, any word of encouragement that I can offer. I'm here for it. So, yeah, Ty put me out there, but there you go.
You know what? You are amazing. It is needed. When you were saying some of the things that you were saying, even as a Black woman being marginalized, and it is hurtful. And that is a conversation for a whole nother day, because we would go a whole nother hour if I start talking about some of the things that I'm still experiencing to this day, being in this industry, being a woman of color in the role that I'm in, and some of the things that they are hurtful. But I know that I'm in the right position. I'm in the right space and the right time. And as Melissa said it best, some people have to water. Some people have to be there. And it's just like marching. It's just like Dr. King and the great Muhammad. Some people have to be there first. And now we're able to come behind them and do the things that we do. And so that's the track that I'm on. I aspire to do things, and I'm able to take a little bit of the whooping and the heaviness, because I know that there are younger women behind me that I'm breaking barriers for, and it won't be questioned when it's time to give that job to somebody who looks like me, and to let them be authentic. They won't have to hide as long as I did with a mask behind, with a mask on, the mask that we talked about. And yeah, I'm not gonna even keep going down, because that's a whole nother topic. Right. So,
James, look, that's the next episode. We gotta
we
move
will definitely have you back, guys. We are taking a break next Tuesday. We take a break on the first Tuesday of every month, and then we will be right back after that with my girl Crystal Dukes. Crystal is up next, and then behind Crystal, I have Alex Jacku. Crystal is coming on July the 11th. So I like that for me and Crystal, because it's something about 7-Eleven and Beyonce and rolling 7-Eleven. It's just somebody being the good numbers. So I think that's going to be a great time. But I adore you, James. I can't wait to grow with you. Melissa is my coach also, so I am definitely activated. And I'm going to tell you, when I got off the task force call with you and Kara the other day, and a few more people for DE&I was ready. I was motivated. So you are an amazing leader also. And I can't wait to serve alongside you in this industry. And if there's anything that I can ever do to be of support, to be of a collective, shout out to Melanin and Multifamily. We are 1 year old. Yeah. Yes, I met Monica, I think 2 years ago, but Dana and Ashia and Monique and the rest of our core collective group, I just met them last year in California at Apartmentalize. And it seems like when you find your people, and Melissa talks about alignment, when you find the people that God has aligned you to, because even with you, I'm like, this is our second time seeing each other in person, but I'm also claiming you as being my best friend in multifamily because of the alignment that you and I have with each other. So there is work to be done. And I am pulling up my sleeves, and I am committing myself to working alongside you to make sure that I am representation for people who look like us. And I am working alongside you and getting the job done. So before we end today, is there anything else you would like to say to the people?
Absolutely. So first of all, humbled and really, really honored to share this platform with you and everybody, all the guests and things like that. But I want to close with this. Knowledge is like a baton, right? If you watch a relay race, that baton is meant to be passed on. Don't hold that knowledge captive. How can you pass the knowledge on that you've gained, the experiences that you've had? How can you share those with others? So let's pass it on to the next runner, and let's make the world a better place. This world a better place. We can start right here, right now. So
Y'all heard it here today. Knowledge is a baton, pass it forward. And when we talk to Alex Jack, you are a recipient, and I have to close out on saying this. That's one of the things that she said on stage at Apartmentalize, is that's why she created her diversity scholarship. Everybody don't have access, and everybody don't have the knowledge. And if you want to be an ally and you are out there, one of the things that we talked about at AAA today, if you are a supplier partner out there and you're saying, what can I do? What can my company do? Create educational scholarships within this industry to give out, because there are people that are missing out, and it's only due to lack of funds. And that will always keep us in the box if we're missing out because we have less. So if you're out there and you're wondering what can you do, that is something that you would be able to do, because it's all about the education. James, thank you so much for being a guest on Talking with Ty. Thank you guys for attending. Today is June the 27th. I will not see you guys before the 4th of July. So have an amazing 4th of July holiday. Eat all the barbecue. I know we celebrated for Juneteenth, but for everybody out there, celebrate and have an amazing time. And we will see you guys back on July the 11th with Crystal Dukes. Have a great day, everybody.
All right.
Thank you so much.
All right.